Okay, I think I'm ready for Kamigawa spoiler season, but I do need to catch up with the last story. Oh boy, I knew that Kato was trying to find Tezzeret. Essentially, was able to finally talk with the Wanderer. Oh, it's such good story. I wonder how they're going to end this. Okay, epilogue. Oh no. Oh no. Oh. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a instant speed top deck thoughts, talking about the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, kind of like big, pretty much preview season start, more or less. For this video, we're going to talk about a few of the cards that pretty much that caught my eye when looking at them and such, as well as go through over the mechanics and just give my quick take on how the mechanics I feel will be good within kind of like Jank Brewing possibilities and such. Note to self, this is not going to be like a full-on review of the cards and such. I've been actually doing a kind of like top first thought review of the cards through a Twitter thread that I'll provide the link for down below in the captions. You can check that and check my opinion on all the cards from the set and such. I'll try to keep up with them as much as I can. Though I do have to admit, trying to catch up with all the cards today was a lot, since there was a lot of good cards. But before we get to that, I feel like we do have to rip the Band-Aid at, I believe as the poetic phrase would put it. Okay. Let's talk about this. Okay. So, one of the weirdest things that they actually did, which actually was really cool development, is that they decided to give us the story way ahead before the whole spoiler season started. We've seen the story from the beginning to the end. Pretty much we got the last story today and such. And there was a very intentional reason why they did that, because, oh dear, today was a gut punch to the Vorpals community. Because, Tamio is a little bit different now. One could say a little bit completed. So yeah, for those who haven't catched up, Tamio has unfortunately got captured by Tezzeret, went to Phyrexia, and went through a completion. So now she is a completed Planeswalker. And I'm not going to lie to you, this was a gut punch. Oh, this was a gut punch. Yeah, a lot of people love this character, I love this character, and seeing her go through completion and now becoming this? Ugh. On the bright side, at least for the people who wanted Tamio to be in the set, at least we got a Tamio. Look, there's a lot of lore implications that now we know that Planeswalkers can be completed, aka Phyrexianized. There's a lot of lore implications. But the fact that they did this to Tamio is just... it's really freaking sad. Like, oh my gosh, it was a gut punch. Like, it was a great gut punch. Like, it's definitely a way to give people who are paying attention to the MTG story definitely something to be... let's just say it raised the stakes, as the old poetic expression goes. So, nevertheless, before we get started with all the Kamigawa stuff, I will talk about this card real quick and just a quick thought about it. Tamio Complete Sage. 5 mana, 2 blue, green and a blue, and a Phyrexian mana, and it has the new mechanic called Completed. I see what you did there. Anyway, this essentially just is a Phyrexian mana Planeswalker, which is kind of scary, but the catch-22 is if life was paid for the Planeswalker, it will enter the battlefield with 2 lesser feudal loyalty counters. So, basically, this is either a 4 mana, pay 2 life, have a free mana loyalty Planeswalker with these effects, or pay the full 5 mana and then essentially not lose life and get a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. And as you can see what it does, her +1 is tap up to 1 target artifact or creature. It doesn't untap during its control's next untap step. That's very good. That's what we expect from a Tamio. Minus X, though, is what I really like about this card. Minus X. Exile target non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of that card. And then minus 7, you create Tamiyo's Notebook, a legendary colorless artifact token with spells you cost 2 less to cast, and you can tap it to draw a card. This card is... I'll give them credit where credit is due for the biggest plot development that happened quite a while in the history of Magic. At least they gave Tamiyo a very powerful card for this plot development. Now, here's the thing about this card. The +1 is nice, the -7 is nice if you can get to it, but I think a lot of people are going to underrate the -X. I think the -X is going to be the main thing that makes this card really good. Because what this gives Simic, essentially, it gives them more or less a roundabout way reanimation spell. So you can reanimate any non-land permanents. That can be creatures, that can be planeswalkers, that can be sagas, that can be enchantments, artifacts, etc., etc. So having Tamiyo, like, let's say, this is going to be one of those cards where it's going to help out a lot of, like, engine-based decks as well as combo decks, because, oh, their combo piece gets removed? Oh boy, Tamiyo comes in, does the minus, brings back your combo piece. That is very, very nice. Now, I'll be honest, this card would have been a little bit oomph with the factor that Divide by Zero was in the format, but since now it's banned, this card gets a lot better. Keep an eye on this card, it's going to see a lot of play. Plus, I should add, of course, since she's Phyrexianized, we do get a Phyrexian text of her, which still makes me sad. And we also get a beautiful yet disturbing borderless art of Tamiyo, so yeah, my summary of this, I am sad, but at least the card's going to be fun to brew with. But though, I will be honest, I love Tamiyo as a character, and seeing this development to her is just... like, I was teary-eyed when I saw the story. Yeah. This is going to be one of those cards where I'm going to be mixed emotions when playing it, because I'm going to be happy to play it in jank value-based brew decks, but I'm still going to be sad because I know the lore implications of this card, so it's just like... I feel like that meme of essentially the... I'm in a glass case of emotions. That's pretty much the best ways I'm going to phrase that. Anyway, let's actually now get to the main talk about with Kamigawa, which is the mechanics. So I'm going to talk about a few of the cards and such, and just mostly go through the quick mechanics that we're seeing. First off, as we kind of known initially with the initial teaser, Ninjutsu is back, and they actually showed off some pretty cool Ninjutsu cards, though the one I do want to focus on for this video is Thousand Face Shadow. A very, very good card. Just a 1-mana, 1/1 human ninja, ninjutsu, 2 and 2 blue. And then what happens is, like, it's a 1-mana, 1/1 flyer. That's very good for ninjutsu because, in general, just this creature just can be bounced to your hand to essentially activate another creature's ninjutsu. That's very good. But if you ninjutsu it, which seems a little weird for doing it for 4 mana for a 1/1, but it has a really good ETB trigger, which is when it enters the battlefield, from your hand, if it's attacking, which it is when it's ninjutsuing, create a token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. That token enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. So essentially, this is our clone effect of the set, kind of like a ninjutsu clone. And it's a very powerful ninjutsu clone. Like, being able to essentially either repeat a powerful ETB, or being able to essentially just get double the attack value, that's very, very good. So, yeah, it's cool to see all the ninjutsu cards that we're getting, so it'll be kind of great to see how this mechanic is explored with Kamigawa. I'll link down below a really good Gavin Verhey video that talks about all kind of like the ups and essentially all the tricks you can do with ninjutsu. I feel like those tips you want to keep in mind, especially with especially with all the ninjutsu cards that we're getting. Also, before I forget, there's also one more mechanic that is within the set, and that is the modified mechanic. Now, what modified basically means is that there are going to be cards in this set that are going to keep an eye if your creature is modified, which is meaning that it is either has a token on it, or not token, but has a counter on it, any type of counter, or equipment attached to it, or any auras attached to it, it is going to be considered a modified creature. And we get cards like this, which I think is one of the really good cards that they revealed with this modified-ish ability. Aki, Emberkeeper. Though I will say the Legendary Goblin Samurai was really cool too, but this one is very good. Aki, Emberkeeper. 1 and a red for a 2/1 enchantment creature, Goblin Warrior. That's nice, but what's the catch? Well, whenever a non-token unmodified creature you control dies, create a 1/1 color spill creature token. Okay, so why is this good? 2 words. Skull Clamp. So, basic premises is once you have like a 1/1 or a cheap creature on the battlefield, you have Aki already on the battlefield for EDH, you have Skull Clamp, you attach Skull Clamp, that creature dies, but the creature when it dies is considered modified, so you get another 1/1 token, which then allows you to reattach Skull Clamp and draw a bunch of cards. Also, I do think this is going to be a good standard card in warrior-based decks, especially those that have equipment-based synergies, since they also are quote-unquote modified and such, so that's going to be nice to at least get some, essentially, card... How would I phrase this? It's a way to get some value if your warriors that get essentially buffed and such die and such, so it's very nice that they actually did that and such, so very cool. Also, just really nice in goblin-based decks, so that's going to be cool. But yeah, I feel remiss if I didn't talk at least real quick about the one Goblin Warrior. Where are you, little one? Hang on. Going to have to go to Mythic Spoilers. We're going to scroll down. Ah, here you are. Goro, the Cyberflucy. It's a legendary Goblin Samurai. Yes! But it's also a very good card, and also shows off kind of like a more how they're going to do this modified ability, where, well, first of all, this is a very good card in general, because it's a bear that can give your creatures haste. Don't underestimate that. But also, just for free and a red, so 5 mana, you can create a 5/5 red dragon spirit creature token with flying, activate only if you control an attacking modified creature. So, basically, if you attack with a modified creature, maybe this, maybe another creature, you spend 5 mana, you get a 5/5. That's very good in the right deck designs. Like, this is, I think even without the modified clause, this is still a 2 mana 2/2 that can essentially make your later game creatures have haste. That's very good. So something to keep in mind. Next up, we're going to talk about their take on sagas this time around. So, sagas are back, but the premise this time around is they're actually double-sided sagas. So, the basic Catch-22 premise with these sagas is you have 2 steps rather than the usual 3 steps. With the third and final step, instead of being sacrificed, it actually transforms into a enchantment creature. There's some very cool ones so far that we've seen. Like, I'll talk about one other one besides this one, but this is a very cool take on Kamigawa's own spin on the saga mechanic. It's really sweet. I love the flavor of this. And just overall, this card, though, is really good if you want to go into a 5-color shenanigans. Just being unconditional removal with the exile effect, being able to have a regrowth effect with the second effect, which, you know me, I love my regrowth effects. And then just it becoming a sit-sits flying trample that essentially, whenever it attacks, essentially it's a regrowth that the opponent chooses, granted, but still it's a regrowth that also buffs up the creature. That's a very nice card. The other one that's also in this, one thing I will note, even though I'm not going to talk about it too much, we do have sagas that are in the common slot, so Pauper players, keep that in mind. This is really cool for Pauper implications, so keep that in mind. Nevertheless, I'm probably have to go to Mythic Spoilers for this one. Hang on a minute, because there was one really... Oh, actually, I know how to do this. Hang on. A little bit of post-editing process here. Let's actually get to this one through... I believe they had an article talking about the sagas. Let's see. The sagas. There we go. So the one that I actually liked a lot is... And also the fact that they have all these sagas based on the story events. Nice touch there. Anyway, so the one that I liked is... Let's see. Ah, here's it is. The Dragon Kami Reborn. So we're going to have to zoom into this a little bit. Ah, there we go. This is probably one of my favorite sagas they showed off. So, the Dragon Kami Reborn. 2 and a green. Essentially a rare saga. And each of the first 2 steps, you gain 2 life, look at the top 3 cards of your library, exile one of them face down with a hatchling counter on it. Then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and then it becomes a creature, which then the creature of it is... oh boy! A really cool egg. Now, this looks a little weird spending free mana to get a 0/1, but when you read the card, you kind of understand why. So, it's an enchantment creature egg. Nice. But whenever this creature, or a dragon you control, dies, you may cast a creature spell from among cards you own in exile with hatchling counters on them, without paying its mana cost. Okay, first things first, I'll just say about this card. I'm gonna love this with Masquerade Nets' shenanigans. Yes! But still, this is a very good card also for dragon-based decks. Very cool card. But yet again, I'll probably talk more about it. It'll probably be on one of my top 10 favorite cards unless we see some cooler cards. But this one's definitely going to be a top 20 if it's not a top 10. I'll say that right off the bat. Love this card. Anyway, now let's see him a little bit. Oh, live everybody. There we go. Anyway, back to this. So, the other mechanic that we have seen so far... and this time I will have to go to the Mythic Spoilers for this one, so let's go to that one real quick. Ba-do-ba-boo. So the other mechanics that we did see, we'll talk about Jin-Katatsus in a minute, don't worry. But another mechanic we saw, and probably one of the more powerful cards to show off this mechanic, Channel is back. For those who never played with Channel, let's get a few clarifications out of the way. Clarification 1. Channel is a effect that you can do. It's an ability. It's an activated ability, which means essentially you don't... this is an effect that doesn't get countered, with the exception of stifle-based effects. So keep that in mind. But for those who never played with Channel, what Channel basically is you can discard the Channel-based card and get an effect. And one of the best Channel cards we have seen so far, at least at the moment, is Bosetju Who Endures. It's a legendary land with this Channel ability, and it has discard this card. Destroy your target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land and opponent controls. That player may search their library for a land card with a basic land type, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. Okay, the fact that this can be 1 mana is cool, but let's be frank, this is basically a 2 mana unconditional land destruction, artifact removal, and non-basic lands, which with how many non-land cards are in the format, that is very good for Standard. And for a lot, and I mean a lot of Eternal formats, like, this is the one where Eternal format players just looked at this card and they're like, wow. Now, I will get the con out of the way. Yes, you are giving your opponent ramp if they have basic lands in their deck, but in Eternal formats, you don't really see that many basic lands see play with the exception of a few deck designs. So this could just be unconditional removal, but even if they get a land from it, I think you don't mind them getting a land if you destroy their Maze of Ith, or their, like, 6 mana artifact, or 4 mana enchantment and such. Plus, this also kills all the Saga creatures in the format, so you gotta keep that in mind. So, yeah, this card is probably gonna see play both in Standard and Alchemy and a lot of multiple formats. It's just really, 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 really nutty. Okay, that's some spoiler cards. We're not going to talk about those, so... pretend you didn't sell those. Okay, so we talked about Saga. We talked about Channel. We're also getting vehicles, which is nice to see in the set. Mostly the vehicles have been pretty cool to see. Like, this one is probably one of the best vehicles we've seen so far. A 4-mana 5/5 of Menace with crew 4, but when it enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to twice the number of vehicles you control the target creature or planeswalker and opponent controls. That's very good. That can be unconditional removal. Also, with this card, remember that Teleportation Circle is a card in the format, so yeah, you could get this to be consistently being able to remove stuff by just flickering it, so very good card. But yeah, we'll see the shenanigans that that's going to bring. Anyway, back up to this. The other mechanic, and I'm actually going to show probably one of the cooler cards that have this effect, they also introduce a new mechanic called Reconfigure. So what's Reconfigure? Reconfigure is basically a artifact creature that are also equipment. Let me elaborate. So essentially it is going to be a creature when you cast a spell, but you can reconfigure it, which when you reconfigure it, you essentially attach it like you would attach an equipment to a creature. Attach it to a creature. You could even use reconfigure to unattach if you want to keep the creature, like maybe if you need a second creature for block or stuff like that, so keep that in mind. Nevertheless, though, the one that they showed off in one of the main key cards of the story, the reality chip. This plus Tezzeret equaled Phyrexian Tamiyo, which makes me sad. Still, the card's very good. Legendary artifact creature equipment jellyfish. Okay, this is probably going to make me and mostly Crow just laugh at this, but it kind of makes me funny that one of my earlier kind of like deck brewing gag skits was essentially just having a jellyfish and being like, what if a jellyfish had a ton of equipment on it? And just the factor that gag is in the past and now we have literally an equipment that's also a jellyfish. I believe I'm going through what the phrase called a inside joke. Anyway, let's talk about the card. So it's a 0/4 creature at its most, so it's just a wall, but it has some really nifty abilities. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. As long as the reality chip is attached to a creature, you may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. Oh boy! And you can reconfigure this for 2 and a blue. Okay, if Jeskai Warriors is going to be a thing, it's probably because this card exists. Because the thing I'm imagining with this card is, yeah, reconfiguring costs a lot, but with Warriors in Standard, there's a lot of cheaper ways to get the equipment attached to creatures, and then this can just be able to play more Warriors from the top of your library and such. Like, there's some silly shenanigans you can do with this card. I'll talk more about it with the top deck font reviews, and if it makes it my top 10, cool, I'll talk about it more. But yeah, keep an eye on this. This card will see play one way or another in the right decks. It's a very good card. And it's also an equipment jellyfish, which I find humor in that. I'll put it like that. Anyway, that's all the mechanics we've seen so far from the set. Nevertheless, we did also got a few new Planeswalkers. Probably the best one of the bunch. I think people will argue about Tezzeret, but I still think besides Tamiyo, I think the best Planeswalker we got from the set is the Wandering Emperor. 4 mana, flash speed, and then as long as it enters the battlefield this turn, you may activate a loyalty times anytime you can cast an instant. And has the abilities of putting a counter on a creature, give it first strike, create a create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance, or exile target tapped creature and you gain 2 life. This card's very silly. 4 mana for unconditional removal or token generation, and the factor is that we have a lot of flicker effects at instant speed, so essentially once you have this on the battlefield, you could, if it's under threat, just flicker it and still get a Planeswalker activation. That's very silly. Keep an eye on the flicker-like spells, both in the standard as well as historic format. I think this card's going to see a lot of play. This card is kind of nuts, I'm going to be honest with you. It's probably one of the nuttier cards I've seen so far, the Planeswalkers, besides Tamiyo. I am still sad about Tamiyo. Anyway, the last card we'll talk about is, of course, the main Praetor bad guy that they have in this set, which is Jane Katatsia's Progress Tyrant. 7 mana for 5/5. Legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. Whenever you cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. A copy of a permanent spell becomes a token. So just that clarification I always love to. As well as whenever an opponent casts an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, counter that spell. This ability triggers only once each turn. Okay, yeah, it's a Praetor. Is it better than Vorinclex? I don't think so, if I'm being legit honest with y'all, but I do think it's a good card. I do like the fact that it has copy-based shenanigans. I like doing copy shenanigans. Kind of like the same reason why I like Tamiyo a little bit, because the reanimation-like spells essentially is a copy spell in some sense, which I kind of like. However, I think the thing about this card a lot of people are going to argue is like, well, it's really hard to remove since your instant sorcery spell get countered. Yes, but one thing you gotta keep in mind, we do have some popular enchantment removal in the format. We have stuff like Binding the Old Gods, we have even Borrowed Time. there's a lot of good enchantment-based removal that can take care of this card really quick, and note to self, not get countered by the effect of Tamiyo. So, I still like the card. I'm definitely going to Drink Brew around with it if I pull it, but, well, I'll put it like this. The factor that I can target it with Tamiyo's completion and it not get countered and essentially make the card useless? Yeah. Also, kind of a funny way to end on this. I'm just gonna be honest with you all. I'm sad about this. Like, I'm so sad about this. But, nevertheless, Kamigawa's looking like a sweet set. There's a lot of cool cards for Eternal formats and such. I'm definitely going to talk a lot about this, but... it's just... Oi. Oi. Like, I wanted to get this out quick, so I wanted to keep this video short. But to put a clarification, I almost was tempted to do an intro skit of just essentially showing me seeing the news of Tamiyo and just me having to censor how many times I said, oh, beep. Which you can probably guess what the beep means, so, yeah. Rest in peace, Tamiyo. I'm still gonna drink brew with you, but I am really sad. And you know the punchline of all this is? We're gonna get a Secret Lair adventure where we're gonna have a Tamiyo Planeswalker card where she's a chibi. I'm gonna love seeing that card. I'll probably play with that card if it's one of my favorite Tamiyo cards, but, it's going to hurt. It freaking hurts. This sucks. Well, nevertheless, sorry to end a little bit on a mellow note, but I hope you all enjoy the shenanigans, and see y'all later. Bada beep, bada boop.